They did not bring cattle to the square that morning. No horses, no land deeds, no crates of tools or sacks of grain. They brought a man. The wooden platform stood crooked under years of use, its boards stained by rain dust and things people preferred not to name. Wind moved through the open space between buildings, carrying the dry scent of dirt and old smoke. The mountains loomed in the distance, silent and cold, as if they were watching. The man stood alone on that platform, tall, broad, shoulders like stone, worn down by time, but not broken. His coat hung in torn layers, stiff with old grime. His beard had grown wild, uneven, streaked with gray and dust. His face carried no expression, only the weight of something that had settled too deep to show. In his arms, wrapped in a thin, worn blanket, was a newborn. The baby was small. Too small. The kind of small that made people uncomfortable to look at for too long. Its breathing was shallow, uneven, like it was still deciding whether to stay in this world or slip quietly away. The man held the child close against his chest, not loosely, not carelessly, but with both arms locked tight, as if every muscle in his body had one purpose left, to keep that fragile life from falling. A few people in the crowd laughed, not loudly, not proudly, just enough to remind themselves they were not the ones standing up there. Someone muttered something about madness. Another shook his head and spat into the dirt. A woman turned away, pulling her shawl tighter around herself, refusing to look any longer. At the edge of the platform stood the man running the auction. Clean coat, gold ring, boots without dust. He raised his voice like he had done 100 times before. Starting price, 1 silver coin. Silence. The wind answered instead. 2 coins. Still nothing. The mountain man did not react. He did not speak. His eyes moved once slowly, scanning the faces below him, not searching for help, just seeing, memorizing, the kind of look a man gives when he already knows how this ends. The baby shifted in his arms, a small movement, a faint sound. The man adjusted his grip instantly, tightening, shielding the child from the wind without even looking down. 3 coins, the auctioneer called, his tone sharper now. No one stepped forward. No one raised a hand. Because everyone there understood something without needing it said. This was not a sale meant to end well. This was a message. The auctioneer smiled thin and controlled and looked out at the crowd like a man waiting for someone to break. No one did. And then, from somewhere behind the line of watching bodies, a sound cut through the stillness. Footsteps. Slow. Measured. Not hesitant. The crowd shifted slightly. Heads turning, space opening without being asked. A woman stepped forward. Her dress was plain worn at the edges. Dust clung to the hem. Her hands were rough fingers marked by work that never truly ended. And her belly, rounded beneath the fabric, heavy with child. She did not look at the auctioneer. She did not look at the crowd. Her eyes were fixed on the man on the platform and the newborn in his arms. There was something in that look. Not pity, not curiosity. Something deeper. Something quieter. Recognition. She walked until she stood at the front. Close enough now that the wind pushed strands of her hair across her face. Close enough to see the cracks in the man's skin, the dryness in his lips, the way his chest rose and fell in slow, controlled breaths. The auctioneer tilted his head, amused. He had not expected this. Few ever stepped forward when things looked like this. He let the moment stretch, savoring the attention. Then he spoke again, louder now. 4 coins. The woman did not answer with words. She reached into the small pouch tied at her side and pulled it free. The metal inside clinked softly. Not much, but enough to be heard. She stepped closer to the table and set the pouch down. The sound was small, but in that silence, it landed like something heavier. The auctioneer's smile shifted. He picked up the pouch, weighing it in his hand, eyes flicking briefly to her belly, then back to her face. He loosened the string, counted, slowly, deliberately, trying to make her uncomfortable, trying to make her doubt. But she did not move, did not blink, did not look away. She simply stood there, waiting. Behind her, the crowd watched with attention that had not been there before. Something had changed, though no one had said it out loud. The auctioneer finished counting, closed the pouch. For a moment, it seemed like he might speak again. Raise the price. Push further. But instead, he gave a short nod. Done. Just like that. No celebration. No cheer. Only the quiet shift of something invisible. The woman stepped past him and climbed the platform. The boards creaked under her weight. Each step slow, careful. Not because she was afraid, because of the life she carried inside her. When she reached the man, she stopped. Up close, he was even larger than he had seemed from below. His presence filled the space, heavy and unmoving, like the mountain behind him. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. The baby made a small sound again, barely more than a breath. The woman lifted her hand. Not toward the child, toward him. Palm open. Steady. An offer. The man looked at her hand, then at her face. There was no fear in her eyes, no hesitation. Just that same quiet certainty. Something in his expression shifted, so slight that most would have missed it. But it was there, a crack in something that had not moved in a long time. He adjusted the baby once more, securing it against his chest. Then slowly he shifted his weight. 1 foot forward, then the other, and he stepped down from the platform. The crowd parted without being asked. No one reached out. No one spoke. They simply watched as the woman turned and began to walk away. The man followed, not beside her, not yet. A step behind, still holding the child like it was the only thing keeping him tied to the world. Behind them, the auctioneer watched his smile gone, now eyes narrowing slightly. This had not gone the way he intended. Not completely. But he said nothing. For now. Because in a place like this, things did not end when people walked away. They only changed shape. And somewhere beneath the silence, something had already begun to move. The truth was, the more on that platform had not always been something people avoided looking at. There had been a time when his name was spoken without hesitation. When he walked through the town not as a shadow, but as someone who belonged. He had lived higher up beyond the last line of settled land, where the air thinned and the trees grew sparse against the wind. A small cabin stood there once built by his own hands. Thick logs. Stone chimney. Smoke rising steady each evening. There had been another pair of hands in that place. Lighter. Quieter. A woman who moved through the cabin like warmth itself, filling the empty spaces without needing to try. Laughter had lived there, too soft and rare, but real, and a promise of more. But the mountains do not care for promises. Winter came early that year. Snow fell heavier than anyone remembered. The paths down to the valley vanished under layers of white that did not melt. Days turned into weeks. Food grew scarce. Wood burned faster than it could be gathered. And one night, when the wind howled louder than it should, something went wrong. No one in the town saw it happen. No one heard the fire start. By the time the smoke reached high enough to be noticed, it was already too late. When spring came and the snow finally began to loosen its grip, a man walked down from the mountain alone. His coat was burned in places, his hands were marked, and whatever had been in his eyes before was gone. He did not stay. He did not speak. He passed through the town like something that did not belong to it anymore and disappeared into the wild again. Months went by. Some said he was dead. Others said they had seen him deeper in the forest, moving between trees like a ghost. No one followed. No one asked. And then, one morning, he came back, standing in the square, holding a newborn. No explanation, no story, just silence. The man who placed him on that platform knew exactly what he was doing. This was not about debt alone. The amount owed had been small, manageable. But when the mountain man had vanished, taking that debt with him, it had become something else, a matter of control, of example. The man running the auction owned more than land. He owned influence. He decided which debts were forgiven and which ones became chains. And he had chosen. When the mountain man returned, weakened, carrying something he could not protect. Alone, it had been the perfect moment. Public, visible, a lesson. No one in that crowd needed it explained. They had seen others broken in quieter ways, fields taken, homes lost, people pushed out without noise or spectacle. But this was meant to be remembered, so no one would forget what happened when you stepped outside the lines drawn for you. And that was why no one had spoken, no one had bid, not because they could not afford it, but because they understood the cost of stepping forward. Except for one. The woman who now walked away from the square, her steps steady, despite the weight she carried, had already paid her price in other ways long before that morning. And she did not look back. The house stood at the far edge of the settlement, where the last fence posts leaned, and the land began to stretch into open scrub before climbing toward the mountains. It was small. Old wood patched more than once roof, weighted down with stones to keep the wind from tearing it free. Smoke stains marked the chimney, but no smoke rose from it now. The woman walked up the narrow path without slowing. The mountain man followed, still one step behind, still silent. The newborn shifted in his arms again, a faint, restless movement. He adjusted instantly, instinct sharper than thought, pulling the thin blanket tighter around the small body. At the door, the woman paused only long enough to push it open with her shoulder. Inside, the air was cold, not empty, just waiting. She moved through the space like she had done it 1,000 times. A few pieces of furniture, a narrow bed, a table worn smooth at the edges, a small cradle, unfinished, resting near the wall. She went straight to the hearth, knelt, struck flint. Sparks caught. Within moments, a small flame grew, feeding on dry wood stacked carefully nearby. Light began to move across the room, pushing back the shadows. The man remained near the doorway, half inside, half out, like something not yet certain where it belonged. The woman did not look at him, did not ask him to come in. She simply worked. A pot hung over the fire. Water poured. A handful of herbs dropped in. Her movements were steady, practiced, even as her breathing came a little heavier than it should. The child inside her shifted. She paused for a second. One hand pressed lightly against her belly. Then she continued. After a moment, she spoke. Not loud, not soft. Just enough to carry. "You can close the door." The man did not answer. But after a few seconds, the door moved. Wood met wood. The wind outside was cut off. He stayed where he was, watching, listening, measuring. She set a bowl on the table, ladled the thin soup into it, then stepped away. She did not offer it to him directly, did not gesture. She simply left it there and turned her back. It was an invitation without words. The man stood still. A long moment passed, then another. Finally, he moved. Slow, heavy steps across the floor, each one careful like the boards might give way beneath him. He reached the table, set the newborn down in the small cradle without looking away from it. The cradle creaked under the new weight, but held. The child made a faint sound, then settled. Only then did the man sit. His hands hovered over the bowl for a second, then closed around it. He ate. Fast at first, then slower, like his body was remembering something it had not felt in a long time. Warmth. The woman continued tending the fire, still not looking at him, still not asking questions. But the space between them had shifted. Not safe. Not yet. But no longer empty. Night came quickly. Cold pressed against the walls. The fire burned low but steady. The newborn slept in the cradle, small breaths barely audible. The man did not sleep. He sat in the chair nearest the door, back, straight eyes open, watching. Always watching. At some point in the night, the woman's breathing changed. It was subtle at first, a slight tightening, a pause between breaths, then another. The man's eyes shifted, focused. She tried to move quietly, tried not to wake anything in the room, but pain has a way of finding its voice. A soft sound escaped her, barely more than a breath, but enough. The man stood, slowly, every movement controlled. She leaned against the edge of the table, one hand gripping it hard enough to whiten her knuckles, the other pressed against her side. Another wave came, stronger. Her breath caught. This was not a simple discomfort. This was the beginning. The man looked around the room once, taking it in. No doctor, no help, nothing prepared, just wood, fire, cloth, and time running out. He moved, fast now, purpose replacing stillness. More wood into the fire. Flames rose higher, pushing warmth into the room. He grabbed the kettle, filled it, set it over the flame. His hands moved without hesitation, pulling down cloth from a shelf, tearing strips with a strength that did not slow for precision. The woman sank to her knees. The pain hit harder now. Her breath came in sharp bursts. She tried to stay quiet, tried to control it, but the body does not listen when it is time. Another sound escaped her, louder this time. The newborn stirred in the cradle. The man crossed the room in 2 steps, one hand steadying her shoulder. Not gentle, but firm, anchoring. He did not speak, did not offer comfort in words. Only action, only presence. Outside, the wind rose, the sky darkened, and then the storm came. It hit like something alive. Wind slammed against the walls, rattling the door, forcing cold air through every crack. Rain followed, heavy and relentless, striking the roof in hard, uneven bursts. Inside, the fire fought to hold. Shadows jumped across the walls. The woman cried out. The sound cut through everything. The man tightened his grip on her shoulder, then moved behind her, bracing her as another wave tore through her body. Time lost meaning. Moments stretched, collapsed. The kettle boiled. Steam filled the air. Cloth soaked. Hands worked. Rough hands. Steady hands. Hands that had once built a home. Hands that had once failed to save one. Now moving with a single purpose. Do not lose this one. The storm outside howled louder. The newborn began to cry, sharp and thin, as if answering the chaos. The woman's strength faltered. Her body trembled. Another contraction hit, harder than the last. She cried out again, voice breaking. The man did not let go, did not step back. He held, he guided, he endured. And then, a different sound. A new sound. Small, raw, alive, the cry of another child. It cut through the storm, through the wind, through everything. The woman collapsed back, breath ragged, body spent. The man held the newborn in his hands, smaller than the first, fragile, slippery with the evidence of arrival. For a second, just a second, he froze, not from fear, from something else, something deeper than he moved. Cloth, wrap, careful now, careful in a way his hands had not been in years. He placed the child beside the woman, the first newborn still crying in the cradle, the second now joining. Two voices, two lives, against the sound of the storm. The woman turned her head slightly, eyes half closed, but aware. She looked at him, and for the first time, he looked back, not through her, not past her, at her. There was no smile, no relief spoken, but something had changed. Something had shifted in the weight he carried. The storm outside began to slow. The wind eased, rain softened. Inside, the fire burned steady. The two children cried, then settled. Small bodies finding warmth, finding breath, finding life. The man sat back slightly, still close, still watching, but no longer at the door, no longer ready to leave, because something had anchored him there. Not debt, not obligation. Something else. Something he had lost once, and was not about to lose again. Morning did not arrive gently. It crept in through cracks in the wood, pale and cold, carrying the smell of wet earth and something unsettled. The storm had passed, but it had not taken the tension with it. The woman sat propped against the wall. Both children wrapped close to her, their breathing soft and uneven, but alive. Her face was drained, her body still trembling from the night, but her eyes remained open, watching. The man had not slept. He stood near the window, one hand resting against the frame, his gaze fixed on the horizon, where the land dipped toward the town. He did not move for a long time. Then slowly his posture changed, a tightening, a shift. He had seen something. At first it was just dust, faint, distant, rising in uneven lines where no wind should have stirred it. Then shapes. Men on horseback, more than a few, riding with purpose. The woman noticed the change in him. She did not ask. She already knew. They were coming. The man stepped away from the window and crossed the room. He did not rush. Every movement was controlled, deliberate, like a man preparing for something he had already accepted. He reached the table, picked up a long knife resting there, its blade worn but still sharp. Then he moved to the door, paused, turned slightly. His eyes moved to the woman, to the two small lives pressed against her. For a moment time slowed. Then he stepped outside. The air was colder than it should have been, the ground still wet mud clinging to his boots, as he walked a few steps away from the house and stopped. He did not hide. He did not take cover. He stood in the open, waiting. The riders arrived fast, hooves cutting through the soft ground, sending dirt and water outward in harsh bursts. They circled before stopping, forming a loose ring around him. 5 men, armed, confident. The one in front smiled as he dismounted. It was the auctioneer, clean coat again, boots still without dirt, like the storm had chosen not to touch him. He looked at the mountain man, then at the house behind him. "You should have stayed in the mountains," he said. His voice carried easily in the open air. "This place was never meant for men like you." The mountain man said nothing. His hand remained at his side, loose, but ready. The auctioneer took a few steps closer. "You walked away from what you owed. Then you come back, bring trouble with you, and expect things to just settle." He shook his head slowly. "That is not how this works." He gestured toward the house. "Everything on that land belongs to me now." The mountain man's eyes shifted slightly. just once, toward the house, then back. The auctioneer noticed. His smile widened. Inside that house, there is something I want. He let the words hang, then added softer, and something I don't need. The men behind him shifted. Weapons loosened. The air tightened. The mountain man moved first. Not fast, not sudden. Just one step forward. Enough. It was all it took. The first man rushed him. A mistake. The mountain man caught the arm before the blade could come down. Twisted hard bone, snapping with a sharp crack that cut through the air. The man screamed, but it did not last long. The second came from the side. The mountain man turned, driving his shoulder forward, sending the attacker crashing into the mud. A boot followed heavy, decisive. No hesitation, no wasted movement. The fight was not loud, not chaotic. It was controlled, efficient. Each motion carried purpose. Each strike ended something. The auctioneer stepped back, the confidence in his face fading just slightly as his men fell one by one into the wet ground. Soon only two remained. They hesitated, and in that hesitation, they lost. Silence returned quickly, broken only by the sound of labored breathing. The mountain man stood in the middle of it, unmoved. The auctioneer swallowed. His eyes flicked toward the house again, then back to the man in front of him. "This is not over," he said, though his voice had lost its edge. But even as he spoke, something shifted, because one of the men on the ground was still moving, not fighting, reaching. A small leather satchel lay beside him, half open. The mountain man noticed, stepped forward, picked it up. The injured man tried to speak, failed. His hand fell. The satchel opened easily. Inside, papers, folded, sealed. The mountain man pulled one free, unfolded it. His eyes moved across the page slowly, then stopped. The air changed, not outside, inside him. The auctioneer saw it, and for the first time, real concern flickered across his face. That paper was not meant to be seen. Not like this. The mountain man lifted it slightly, turned it toward the light. There, clear even through the dirt and blood. A signature, a mark. Not the auctioneer's, not a debt, a transfer, ownership. But not from the woman, from someone else. Someone who had no right. And beneath it, another name. A name the mountain man had not seen in years. His jaw tightened. The memory came without warning. Fire, smoke, a night that had taken everything. And now, a thread leading back. The auctioneer spoke quickly now. "You do not understand what you are holding." But the mountain man did understand. Enough. He stepped closer, close enough that the auctioneer had to tilt his head back slightly. For a moment it seemed like violence would come again, that it would end there. But it did not, because voices were rising from the direction of the town. People, drawn by the noise, drawn by something that they had not felt before. The mountain man did not look away. He held the paper out, toward the gathering crowd. An old man stepped forward, hands shaking slightly as he took it. He read, slowly, carefully. The crowd leaned in, listening without words. When the old man finished, he looked up, at the auctioneer, at the mountain man, then at the people, and he nodded. That was all. But it was enough, because the truth had shape now. It had weight, and it was no longer hidden. The auctioneer tried to speak again, but this time, no one listened. The crowd did not step back. They did not look away. They stayed, and the balance shifted, not through force, but through something rarer. Choice. The auctioneer took a step back, then another. His men did not rise. No one followed him as he retreated, because for the first time, he had nothing to stand on. The mountain man turned, without watching him go, without needing to. He walked back toward the house, each step slower now. He reached the door, opened it. Inside, the fire still burned low. The woman sat where he had left her, the two children resting against her. Safe, for now. He stepped inside, closed the door behind him. The world outside could wait. Days passed, quiet ones, the kind that felt unfamiliar after so much noise. The town did not come near, not at first, but the tension did not return either. Something had broken, something had changed. The woman moved carefully as her strength returned. The children grew stronger with each day. Small sounds, small movements, life building itself, piece by piece. The man stayed, not as a shadow near the door anymore, but within the space. He fixed what was broken, reinforced the walls, stacked wood, moved like someone building again, not running, not hiding, Building. One evening, as the sun lowered behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the land, the woman stepped outside, one child in her arms, the other resting inside. The man stood a few steps away, watching the horizon, always watching. She walked up beside him, not too close, but not distant either. For a while, neither spoke. Then she looked at him. "You can stay," she said. Simple, no weight behind it, no demand, just truth. He did not answer, not with words, but he did not leave. The wind moved softly across the land. The mountains stood where they always had, unchanged. But something below them had shifted, not in a way that could be seen from far away, not in a way that would be written down, but in the quiet space between 3 lives, now 4, a place that had once been empty, now held something else, something steady, something that did not break so easily. And for the first time in a long time, the man lifted his gaze to the sky. Not searching, not remembering, just looking. If this story kept you watching until the end, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories.